Well, hello, my pretties. It's the Queen of Lions here. Welcome to episode 151 of Shadows and Pretties. So, today in this episode, we're going to be doing the sequel to a certain movie. Now, last episode, we talked about the Blue Lagoon that came out in, 1980. And I'm going to sit here and say right now, I'm going to do the sequel, which is a sequel to The Blue Lagoon. This sequel we're going to do a review on today is called Return to the Blue Lagoon. Now, this one is basically the sequel to the Blue Lagoon, but this one, the difference right here is, they have, to be fair, they have different characters, different situations, and yeah. So, yeah. I mean, this one, I've really found this one to be a really good sequel, but there are a few ups and downs to it. But before I get to that, I'm gonna sit here and basically go through the plot of this in case if you guys are wondering about, what the plot of this movie is about. But yeah, you could probably tell that there are similarities to, this there's quite similarities to this, to the original. So, yeah, I guess we'll get started with the I guess let's get started with the movie, shall we? Now, this one came out August 2nd, 1991. So, yeah. Let's get started with the plot. Now, this takes place in 1897, where Miss Sarah Hargrave, a widow who had two young children, are cast off from the ship as they were traveling on because the ship's crew were infected with cholera, which is a disease. After days afloat, Canary, a sailor who's been sent with them, tries to kill the boy because of his excessive crying. Sarah eventually angrily beats Canary to death with the harpoon and dumps his body overboard. The trio then arrives at the beautiful young island and on the South Pacific, and Sarah tries to raise them to be civilized. As the orphan boy Richard was born and raised by young lovers on the same island, they grow up and Sarah educates them from the Bible as well as her knowledge, including the facts of life, and she cautiously demands the children to never go to the forbidden side of the island. 8 years later, when Richard and Lily are basically 10 and 8 years old, Sarah dies from pneumonia, leaving them to fend for themselves. She's buried on this cemetery looking over the tidal reef area. Together, the kids survive on their resourcefulness and the bounty of their remote paradise. 6 years later, both Richard and Lily grow up to be beautiful, strong, beautiful teenagers. They live in a house on the beach to spend their days together, fishing, swimming, and exploring on the island. Both their bodies mature and develop as they're physically attracted to each other. Richard lets Lily win a child's game of the Easter egg hunt game, and then dives to find Lily an adult pearl for her reward. His pursuit for racing a lagoon shark also sparks a domestic quarrel. Lily thinks that he's fooly, but then lifelessness to make Richard feel virile. Lily eventually awakens the next morning to first experience her first menstrual cycle, just as Sarah describes the fair hole of womanhood. Richard awakens the next morning with, let's just say a very big surprise and suffers from a nasty mood swing, which he cannot explain. Yeah, I can't really say the other word because, you could probably understand if you've seen the movie or you've heard of it. You probably will understand what I mean. They get into an argument regarding privacy and their late mother's rules. Eventually, one night, Richard goes off to the forbidden side of the island and discovers a group of natives from the other island who uses the shrine impressive. Now, Tiki, like an idol to sacrifice to conquered enemies every full moon, Richard eventually camouflages himself with mud and tries to hide in the muck. Meanwhile, Lily worries about his disappearance and Richard escapes unscathed, although he's been seen by a lone native. Ultimately, after making up for their fight, Richard and Lily discover natural love and passion, which deepens their emotional bond. they fall in love in exchange for wedding vows and rings, and they remain in the jungle. They can simulate their now newfound feelings for each other for the next few months. Soon after, a ship arrives at the island carrying unruly sailors, a proud captain and his beautiful spoiled daughter named Sylvia. The party is welcomed by the young couple as they ask to be taken back to civilization after many years in isolation. Sylvia tries to steal Richard from Lily and seduce him, but as tempted as he is by the strange ways, he realizes that Lily is in his heart and soul, upsetting Sylvia. Richard angrily leaves Sylvia behind in the middle of the fish pond in plain view of the landing party. Meanwhile, Quinlan, a sailor, grabs Lily in her watches Lily in her bath, and drags her back to the house, where he tries to violate her and steal her pearl before Richard comes back to her rescue. Quinlan open fires on Richard, who flees, but Richard lures Quinlan to his death by the jaws of the shark at the tidal reef area. Upon returning, he apologizes Lily for hurting her, and she eventually reveals to him that she's pregnant and tells him that if he wants to leave, then she will not stop him, but that she wants to raise their child away from civilization, away from guns, so they decide to stay and raise their child on the island. As they feel their blissful life could not compare to civilization, the ship departs as the two lovers stay on the island, and they have their baby, which turns out to be a girl, and thus the movie ends. Now, I really do think this one was a really good sequel to the Blue Lagoon movie that came out in 1980. This one apparently came out 11 years after Blue Lagoon came out, because the Blue Lagoon came out in 1980 and this one came out in 1991. So this one came out at least 11 years later. Like, if you guys really watch this review of this, you could probably understand, there are some similarities that the sequel does have that they kind of did with the original Blue Lagoon movie. So, there are certain flaws with this movie. Now, one of the flaws I do know is that the plot of this movie is basically kind of the same thing as the original Blue Lagoon movie. Like, the plot of this sequel is basically pretty much the same as the first movie, but there's a few differences, such as characters are different. Well, I know it's a sequel, but characters are different. There's different situations as to why they why they abandoned ship. Because in the first movie, the ship catches on fire, but in this one, the ship crew becomes very sick, and it was the only way to keep the children away. So, and another thing is basically this movie kind of pretty much copies. I'm not saying it's a direct ripoff or anything, but it pretty much copies the same plot of the first Blue Lagoon movie. But when they put it into this one, they kind of decide to change it up a bit, so to speak. If that makes any sense. Now, from what I did here personally, this is based on of the book called The Garden of God, which is a romance novel by Henry D. Verstackpool, which is also the same person who did the Blue Lagoon the Lagoon story. Now, The Garden of God is based off of this movie, but it kind of copies the same plot as the Blue Lagoon movie. So, before I go with the difference between the Garden of God and Return to the Blue Lagoon, I'm gonna explain the certain things. Well, this movie did not do, from what I've heard, didn't do as much as the original movie did. So, I mean, I can understand why it was why it got negative reviews and that. So, yeah. I mean, I can understand that. So, but I mean, yeah. With all due honesty, I mean, it's copies the same plot as the first movie. So, yeah. That's kind of why I can understand why people didn't really care for this movie. I mean, the sequel was good, but I wish they didn't really copy the same plot of the movie this one as they did with the first movie. So, The Garden of God is basically kind of the same thing basically with the Blue Lagoon, but there is I'm going to go with, certain things about this. Now, there are certain things that But the plot of this, I'm not going to go too much into the book because I don't know the book about it, but it kind of goes, it's completely different in a sense, but at the same time, this honestly kind of is, kind of different. Now, Return to the Blue Lagoon, even though that came out in 1991, it pretty much copies the same thing as the Blue Lagoon, the original movie, did. But I don't understand why that was the case, but maybe there was something about it. Now, in this one right here, in this one right here, in the book, it's basically the sequel of Blue Lagoon, but it does have a different plot line and all that. Overall, with all due honesty, I really do find that this honestly presents pretty good concept for, what this movie really is. Now, I mean, I prefer the first one because with this sequel, it kind of pretty much copies the same thing of the first movie, but except with different with different characters and different characters and different situations. So I mean, this one kind of is somewhat original, but at the same time, it pretty much copies almost the same thing as the first movie. It's the only reason why I didn't really care for this movie that much. I mean, I'm not trying to sit here and be a downer or anything like that, but yeah, that's just me. But yeah, I mean, I think this movie actually did good as the first movie, but I wish it was done better. That's just me. I really wish it would have been done better in a sense. But yeah, that's just here or there. But with all due to be completely fair, I didn't really think this one was a bad story. I really do think that this movie would have been better if it didn't really copy this one really too much. But yeah, but like I said again, I mean, that's just my own opinion on this movie. I mean, the sequel could have been better if it didn't really copy the almost the same plot of the first movie. I mean, the book of sequel to the Blue Lagoon called, the Garden of the God or something, it has a completely different plot than this movie did. So maybe there were some similarities in that one, but that's here or there. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an alright sequel. Maybe not the best, definitely not bad, but not perfect either. But wish it could have been better. But yet again, that's just my opinion. And if you don't like the sequel to the Blue Lagoon, or aka Return to the Blue Lagoon, if you don't like this movie, I respect your opinion. If you like this movie, I also respect your opinion too. My opinion, it's alright. Not perfect, but not bad either. But I mean, I wish the sequel could have been better. Maybe the plot could have been different than kind of having it act similar to the first movie. Other than that, it was not a bad movie. Could have been better though. But anyways, the acting's pretty good in this one. I mean, just like with the Blue Lagoon, this acting was pretty good. I mean, pretty interesting. But yet again, there were some parts of it that did make me cringe. A few parts though, not a whole lot. Not as much as Blue Lagoon did make me cringe, but yeah. Pretty good movie that came out in the 90s. This movie came out in the early 90s, and this was back when the early 90s movies were a big hit. So, yeah. Anyways, that being said, with that being the case, what did you guys personally think of this movie? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done personally to help make the movie a lot better? Feel free to leave me now with your thoughts down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode, and if you're new to this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out.